everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am here today on this, it's gray here in North Carolina on this gray Thursday with Miss Nayiri Mississian, and she is in the United Kingdom, and she is here to talk with us about type 1 diabetes and low carbohydrates, and really just give us the lowdown. And one of the reasons I wanted you on here is because I don't know nearly as much about low carb and type 1 that I really want to know, and it's super important. And yeah, so tell us about you, what you do, and why you're passionate about this.
Thank you for inviting me, Rebecca. I've been looking forward to this. So, okay. So, I was diagnosed at age 5. So I'm quite a veteran type 1 diabetic, 47 years of diabetes for me now. Maybe 48. You see, I don't remember my age.
Well, you don't look a day over 40, so.
Yeah, but past 50, I don't remember my age, so I always forget because I know I was diagnosed at 5. Anyway, so yeah, I think I'll be 52 this year. Yeah, 52 this year. Okay. So, I've always been fascinated by the human body because of my diagnosis and growing up as a child who was different from everyone else, who had to take daily multiple injections. I was always fascinated. I wanted to find out, to learn more about diabetes, and not many people knew in those days. I mean, they didn't understand. They knew that obviously a type 1 diabetic, it was called juvenile diabetes back then, by the way, in 1978.
Yeah, I remember. I had a friend that was diagnosed when I was in elementary school in the 80s. So it was juvenile, and now
they changed the terminology, certainly in medical literature, because now more and more adults are being diagnosed with autoimmune diabetes. It would be nice if we called it autoimmune diabetes, but so then now they're calling the adult diagnosis cases as LADA diabetes, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, otherwise known as type 1.5 as well. I always think to differentiate between type 1 and type 2, it would be nice to call it type 2 diabetes, maybe insulin resistance diabetes, or in the case of type 1 diabetes, maybe autoimmune diabetes. So
yeah, I like that.
Something along those lines, it would be nice. So so I've always been passionate about health, and I remember when we were covering the sciences in high school, right? So all the sciences were broken. I mean, in the British education system, you just take science course, and it would include everything from physics, chemistry, everything that comes under science would be. So you learn bits of everything under this big science umbrella. But I grew up in the Middle East, and when I went to high school, we had separate courses, separate subjects: chemistry, physics, and biology. And although I hated chemistry and physics, I just couldn't see the relevance. I couldn't at the time, the relevance of those sort of domains to my personal life. I was fascinated by biology. So when I went to sort of started college in my freshman year, I remember we had to take certain electives, and I chose to take biology because I was just so fascinated to learn about the human body and how the human body works. So I don't think that passion died away. And so in 2015, 2015 is exactly 10 years ago, I was on YouTube, and completely by chance, I came across one of Jason Fung's videos, and he was talking about fasting. It made so much sense to me. Of course, he was giving examples from his patients, who were either obese or type 2 diabetics or both. So his lecture was not about type 1 diabetics, but I thought, if everyone else in the world pretty much can do it, type 1 diabetics should be able to do it too. So I started searching videos. There wasn't that much information. There wasn't that much information back then, certainly not about fasting. But then that's how I also learned about low carbohydrate nutrition. There were a couple of videos, and I believe one of them was from the Australian type 1 diabetic doctor. He's a radiologist, Dr. Troy Stapleton. So he's type 1 as well. I've interviewed him on my channel. So I think it was an old video from him, and he was talking about low carbohydrate nutrition. So I was working, because my background is linguistics. So I was a full-time educator here in the UK at the time. And I also run a second business, which is a translation business. So I have my own company, translation company. I thought, if I have any free time between full-time teaching and being a mom and running my translation company, any free time, I'm going to devote it to researching nutrition for type 1 diabetics and learn more about fasting, whether it would be suitable for type 1 diabetics. And my intention was, all the notes I collect, I'll put them in a book, handbook, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever notes I could come up with, I'll collect them all and publish a book. So this is how my interest started. So initially, I was just researching and reading and researching and looking up, online sites and reading books. And that's because I wanted to publish a book, and I wanted to be, obviously, to contain relevant medical information. And then that's how my coaching business emerged. So I've been doing this. I'm a health coach now, accredited with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. And so, I've been doing this now for four years.
So 4 years. So the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, I do believe it was founded. Some of the founding members was Dr. Tro Kalyugian. And Dr. Laura Buchanan, and I'm friends with Dr. Buchanan. So so it's interesting, like how we're all connected, like in this space. We're it's like 1 or 2 degrees of separation with everybody. So that's really interesting. Now, so do you work with a lot of type 1s, or do you work with type 1s and type 2s?
I work with, so I would say that maybe about 40% of my clients are type 1s.
Nice.
So everyone else is either type 2 or just want to do this for weight loss or
yeah.
to prevent. I mean, I have some people who've lost a sibling to cancer or some other metabolic condition, so they want to prevent the same happening to them. So health conscious people, I have a mixed bag. And I always say, Rebecca, that from my experience, working experience, I've learned so much more than from all the books that I've read and all the lectures I've listened to put together. Isn't that
I bet.
awesome?
It is. You learn so much more when you have it in real life than something just written on a page, and there's more dynamics with it. So something super interesting I wanted to ask about, because I wanted to see what the nuance is with type 1 diabetics and ketones, because we know that type 1 diabetics have the biggest risk for diabetic ketoacidosis. And if you are on a low carbohydrate diet, you tend to make ketones. How does that work in type 1 diabetes? Because to me, I'm like, does it still work because you're giving yourself insulin and you still have some ketones on board? Or does the exogenous insulin block it completely? So, I would like you to talk a little bit about ketones and insulin and how it affects type 1s.
This is a very good question. And I think this is primarily the main reason why your medical professional may not support you in this journey, because
Mm-hmm.
in their mind they associate ketones with
Mm-hmm.
DKA or
DKA.
ketoacidosis.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Rebecca, let's face it, for the average glucose burner or carb eater, ketones have no place in their system. They shouldn't be displaying large amounts, certainly large number of ketones. I mean, maybe an overnight fast might result in a 0.1 or
One, yeah.
significant amount of ketones, but you are never going to have significant amount of ketones if you are
Mm-hmm.
burning, if you're a glucose burner, right? If you're a carb eater.
Yeah.
So in that context, and given that all our recommendations are based on the carb eating population. Yeah, I mean ketones. You see ketones, and I've had DKA before. I've had ketones, and I had to go to the emergency because I was a carb eater. What on earth are ketones doing in my body? My ketones were like 6, 5. I was feeling rotten, horrible, sick,
Mm.
nauseous, throwing up. I remember having a bucket in my hand that my husband was driving me to the hospital. I've been there. You shouldn't be having a significant amount of ketones in your system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, however, in the context of someone who is not burning glucose, because you are burning glucose, I mean, but not as your primary
Source.
source,
Yes.
right? So, in the context of ketosis or a ketogenic diet, the presence of ketones is actually quite normal. I mean, it is something to celebrate. We celebrate it, right? If you have
Yeah.
ketones, you're in ketosis, and there is a therapeutic element to being in ketosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are different contexts, and I don't think many sort of healthcare providers understand the difference because they don't have the training. They do not understand ketosis, right?
Yeah.
My diabetes consultant, okay, you call them endos there, like endocrinologists,
Yeah.
right? Told
Yeah.
me, so what's this about? I haven't learned it. Like, is it not dangerous? And I tried to explain it to him. Because when I went for my fasting blood test, which is done, well, depending on if I'm in the country, like every 6 months or at least
Mm-hmm.
once a year, right? And they also
Mm-hmm.
check to the urine.
Ketone, and they can look for ketones. Yeah.
And there's some ketones there. And and it was like, oh, ketones. And I said, oh, great. Because, I'm fasted. Like, I ate maybe 6 p.m. the night before, and I was there like 11 a.m. the next day. I said, that's so many hours of fasting. Of course, I will have ketones. That's good. He was alarmed. So that's when I started having that conversation with him and realized that he genuinely hasn't had that training.
Yeah.
Huh?
I try to explain that to a lot of people. Is that like people like I hear in the ketogenic community, especially here in the United States, people are like, oh, I really just, how do I find me a keto doctor or a carnivore doctor? It's like, you don't necessarily need to have a keto doctor or a carnivore doctor. You do need to try to educate your doctor, like, because then they can go on and help other people. People don't want the pushback, and I get it, but it's really not a lot of their fault. They just don't get the training. And in pathophysiology books here in the United States, it doesn't even mention ketogenic diets except for people who are the only people it's ever possibly recommended for is COPD patients. And that's because you produce less CO2. And so it's like, that's the only one. Everything else, it's like, it's ketoacidosis or it's starvation ketosis. And it's like, well, there's also another piece of that spectrum you're leaving out.
Well, talking of starvation ketosis, again, I mean, if you are if your diet is primarily ketogenic, or even if it's high protein, not your classic ketogenic diet, but high protein, moderate fat, and very low carb diet, you're still in ketosis. It might be sort of mild ketosis, but you are in ketosis. That's not starvation, because you are giving your body fuel on a daily basis. And when it comes to type 1 diabetes, you are never stopping your insulin. This is important. This is really important, because I have a fasting group for type 1 diabetics on Facebook. People come there and say, okay, so I'm planning the fast. I've never done a fast. I'm going to not eat for 24 hours. Do I still need to take my insulin? Tell them, you absolutely need to take your insulin. We don't have a choice. You cannot survive on zero insulin. I mean, if you are type 1, you're not producing any insulin. You are always going to need insulin. In fact, if you are type 1 diabetic, you're going to need insulin for every macronutrient. And this may be a little bit different from the general population, because you can eat all the fat you want.
And barely any bump in
None. In fact, I have carnivore clients, non-type 1, not type 1 diabetics, but carnivore, and they reversed their type 2 diabetes. They eat huge amounts in one sitting of meat, not a single bump. A type 1 diabetic eats that much meat. With the fat that comes with it, you are going to need massive amounts of insulin for it. So,
which is super interesting in physiology, because I've seen that study too, where they looked at that, and I've seen the graphs between the different, protein alone and then protein plus fat, and the insulin levels needed and of course they were doing it on a closed loop system, insulin pump and CGM system. And when you add fat to protein in a type 1, and this is unique to type 1s, you need way more insulin, but not in a normal population, which is interesting.
It's very interesting. So if you are type 1, you're always going to need 2 types of insulin. Your background or long-acting insulin. And for anyone using a pump, it's actually called basal insulin. So it's just different terminology. Background, basal, long-acting is the same thing. You're always going to need that to take care of your basic
daily functioning,
physiological functions, right? And then on top of that, every time you eat, you're going to need insulin to cover your food. And that's a different kind of insulin. It's not your long-acting. It could be intermediary acting, or it could be rapid
short insulin. Depending.
But if you're fasting, you're not eating, obviously you are going to take your long-acting insulin. But you may still see rises during the day, and that's because your liver is producing, releasing glucose. And because you're not producing enough insulin to deal with that glucose, you may actually need to take small doses of corrections to bring your blood sugars back down to normal. Because this assumption that if you're fasting, you're not going to need any insulin, or you're going to need very little insulin, is simply not correct. However, if you do go on an extended fast, and I tried it. I tried it just to prove and show to the world. I didn't need to lose weight, but just to show the world that it can be done. It can be done safely. I went on a 5-day fast. Yes, your long-acting insulin dose will reduce dramatically, but also, the corrections that you give yourself for the few bumps here and there, the corrective dose also may reduce, but you're always going to need it. Because if you don't take your insulin, that's when you fall into DKA. DKA, ketoacidosis, is a lack of insulin, usually, but not always, accompanied with high blood sugars, but not always.
You can have euglycemic. There is euglycemic DKA.
There you go. Yeah, thank you for mentioning it, because people go, but my blood sugar is normal. Take your insulin,
But
regardless.
acidosis is acidosis. Once it gets
Yeah.
up to a certain amount, you tip over that point and then kidneys start to fail. And that's not where we want you.
No, exactly. So insulin is extremely important. So, some of my community members say, but so my blood sugars are so normal, they're like in the 80s, right? If I take insulin, um, I'm going to crash. I tell them, take insulin and take glucose tablets. I just don't want to it's a liability. I don't want to be the one telling you not to take your insulin, because that is dangerous. Take your insulin, take a small dose of insulin, and if you're crashing, take your glucose tablet. Here, it's always with me. I take a tab and treat your low, bring it back up to normal again, but at least you'll know that you have taken your insulin.
Yep, exactly. Now, we do have a question from the lady this morning, and I didn't know if this was something that you may understand more. Daughter with type 1, 18 years old, low carb, living in Barbados, high underarm odor. She started to have increased body odor when she went on low carb. Have you experienced this?
No, I wonder what else is going on there, because whether it's normal.
I wonder if it's a possibility of overgrowth of a normal flora that is happening because of maybe pH changes in the skin due to. I'm just trying to see problem solve that. Most people go on low carb and they lose body odor.
Yeah. In fact, I'm telling you, I haven't used deodorant for years, for at least 8 years.
I will say I was not that person. I am not that person. I am the opposite. I am not that. I'm not that person. I have not been that lucky yet to be like, okay, no deodorant. Trust me, you will thank me for using it.
I was going to say that if she's new to ketosis, maybe the body's adapting to it, but she's been in ketosis since 2022.
Either that, or I think that's her daughter was maybe diagnosed in 2022 as a teenager, as a middle teen, because it was 2025, probably 15.
Because when you first sort of enter ketosis, the first few months can be rough. Like, you're gonna notice the smells you have, like your breath. Like, you go, what on earth is happening? I can't even bear my own breath, right? It goes away after a while. But when you're new to it, your body's adapting, and you can actually physically smell the
your
ketone.
Own. Yes.
Your
I
brain.
can smell it when my husband went keto and low carb. I could smell it rolling off of him. I could be within 10 feet of him and I'm like, somebody's in ketosis. I can smell it. And it just rolls. It just rolls off. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you get used to it after a while. So it could be something like that. But also Barbados, I'm thinking it's humid.
It's warm.
Sweating a lot. I don't know how I would survive. I'm in perimenopause, so probably all my hot flashes would come back. And so
no hot flashes. So this is Rich. He's LADA and carnivore and is never in full ketosis, 0.5 at the most. I mean, and that's fine. I don't know anybody that necessarily needs to be more than that unless you have a neurological disorder. Then I like people to be more of a 2 range. But that's in a normal population that does not have pancreatic insufficiency.
There you go. I mean, I couldn't put it any better than that. There is no reason to check for ketones unless, of course, you are monitoring your ketone levels because of some neurological disease. But otherwise, for type 1 diabetes, if you are carnivore, you're not eating carbohydrates, Who cares if you're 0.4 or 0.6? I mean,
Yeah.
ketones.
I think a lot of people don't understand that protein absolutely will bump you out, especially if you're not in like a diabetic. It'll bump you out of ketosis almost every time. Like it's just happens. It's
I
normal
mean,
physiology.
I can tell this carnivore person to perhaps eat less protein and more fat, but then again, that's something you have to judge for yourself. I mean, protein is extremely important, in my opinion.
Yep.
And even when you have to inject for it, it's insulin in the right context. It's insulin that's actually helping synthesize that protein and turn it into muscle tissue, right? I mean, you need insulin to do that job.
Yes. If it's in the ketogenic world, especially because I come from Dr. Berry's community, 2 to 5 fasting insulin is optimal. It's what they like people at. And then people are like, oh, I want to get mine lower. And it's like, no, you don't, because you need your body to run.
Yeah.
And then there are people that end up being pancreatically suppressed. I've heard of the insulin suppression in people that have gone too low carb for too long. And they're like 1.5, and their glucose starts to shoot up. And it's like, it's because your body's like, needs your pancreas needs a jolt. So you have to go and do that carb refeed in some way, shape, or form. If they're carnivore, I'll tell people to drink raw milk. But it's like you need that little bit to remind your pancreas to work.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So.
Yeah.
Oh, where can we find you? Yes. So I do have her link as a banner. And she's at lowcarbandfasting.com. So you can find her there. So you can check her out over there. Somebody asked if it could have been oxalate dumping. It could absolutely be some sort of oxalate dumping too. So I'm not super up on oxalates. I'll let other people handle that. That's too much for my brain right now. I'm trying to shove too much other stuff in my brain.
Yeah, oxalate dumping, it could have been. Rebecca, I just thought of something. Most of the time, people think of type 1 diabetes as the pancreas not working. And it's actually, that's a myth, because only one function of the pancreas is responsible
so many.
for many things. Only one aspect of it, the alpha cell, the beta cells are making enough insulin, or they're not producing any insulin, right? So it's only the beta cells that aren't really doing their job. You have the alpha cells. Alpha cells are actually producing glucagon. So in a type 1 diabetic, your alpha cells, usually in a non-diabetic person, the alpha cells, beta cells, so glucagon and insulin work in synchronicity, if you like. They signal to it. So they read each other's signal. So if glucagon is high, then insulin will know that it's going to have to also bump its production
up. Right?
But in a type 1 diabetic, you've got glucagon working without any signal from insulin, because we're taking the insulin through as exogenous insulin, right? So your glucagon, your pancreas, isn't really aware of the exogenous insulin coming in. So it's producing glucagon without a signal from the insulin. So that signal is also missing. So we have to, when you have to take, like through the day, if you have to take corrective doses because you have unexplained high blood sugars, it's because it's your alpha cells are working beautifully. Your glucagon is helping the liver release glucose. That's normal function. Don't embrace it, right? People get frustrated. I'm not eating, I'm fasting. I shouldn't be having an unexplained rise.
That means your liver is dumping what it's being told to dump.
Exactly. That's because at least that part of your pancreas is working beautifully. Take insulin to bring that high down. And I always describe type 1 diabetes. In fact, I asked my video editor recently to create a reel for me, like a 25-second reel. It's a balancing act. You're balancing. So on one side, you have insulin. On the other side, you have glucose, and you're constantly balancing your blood sugars. It's a balancing act. You have to do it for the rest of your life. And it's a challenge. It can be frustrating if you don't know what you're doing, but you get so used to it that for me, the key to success is not to get frustrated with it.
Yeah.
You have a low, treat it. I never go anywhere without my glucose tablets. I never go anywhere without my insulin, because I know that I can't take a break from the balance. I can't just, leave it to deal with it itself. It's not going to happen. I can't ignore my blood sugars. I'm constantly having to balance it, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm in the gym or going for a walk or cooking. I have my CGM data here with me all the time. You can't ignore it, but it becomes part of you, right? And you get used to it without frustration. Don't let it frustrate you. You're a little high, take a small corrective dose. You're a little low, take a quarter of a bite of your glucose tab. I mean, this one tab.
Just lick the tab.
Or lick it. I actually bite it into quarters sometimes. That's how little glucose I need to actually bring my load back up to normal. You don't need massive amounts of sugar. That's 4 grams of sugar. Obviously, half of it would be about 2 grams. And if I bite a tiny amount, that's going to be 1 gram of sugar. I know exactly, it's precise. I know how much I need depending on where I am in my graph. I deal with it. I'm afraid to say, I mean, I understand why people get frustrated with it, but embrace the fact that you're going to work on it. It's a balancing act. You're constantly, it's like being on the rope. Is it called rope walking?
Tightrope walking. Yeah. Walking a tightrope.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's like you're balancing yourself constantly, right? And so, from the beginning to the end, you're just gonna have to do it. That's how type 1 diabetes is. You can get frustrated with it. You're gonna fall off. And you can't afford to get frustrated with it. You have to be on top of it. But I always say, Rebecca, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting on my high horse, but I'd rather type 1 than a condition that leaves me desperate and losing hope because I wouldn't know what to do with it, how to help myself, right?
Yeah.
And type 1, I've lived a happy life. I literally have lived a happy life. There's nothing in life that I haven't done because of my type 1 diabetes. Have a meaningful, peaceful life. And I can manage my conditions. It's a condition that you can manage. And I'm grateful for it, actually. I'm grateful for it.
That's great. Rich also has a question. It says severe Dawn syndrome each morning, up to 200, eating carnivore. How does he get this corrected without taking too much insulin? He is the latter.
Rich, don't fear insulin. I would fear blood sugar figures going up to 200, a lot more than the insulin that's needed to bring that back down. So take insulin, or as much insulin as your body requires to bring that 200 back down to normal levels. In fact, I would take the insulin before I hit the 200, because once you hit that high, then blood sugar can get kind of stubborn. It won't come back down quickly unless you take massive amounts of insulin. And then even then, because you are in a temporary insulin, look at it as this way. And it may not be physiologically correct, Rebecca. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I always describe it as a temporary insulin resistance. The higher your figures are, the more stubborn that it gets to bring your blood sugars down. So then you end up taking massive amounts of insulin, and then guess what? Within 2 hours, you're like,
you crash.
So
is there an overnight thing that could happen? Or I'm wondering, like, if there's a solution or a strategy for an evening solution. I just don't know nearly as much about type 1s as what I want to.
So, I mean, it depends. There are two things you can do, Rich. If your blood sugar is rising to 200 every single morning, you might want to set your alarm. It depends on what time your blood sugar starts rising. But if it is, say, it's rising from 4 a.m. in the morning, you could actually take rapid acting insulin at 4 o'clock, say 2 units or something to that effect. Again, this is not medical advice. And usually that would work and go back to sleep. And then people wake up with normal blood, because in a non-diabetic, that's what the pancreas would do. In a non-diabetic person, the pancreas would actually bump insulin production to kind of bring your blood sugars back down again. Rebecca, you're not diabetic. You are not going to see figures of 200 at dawn, because your pancreas will release insulin to bring that level back down again. Alternatively, Rich, I mean, something else you can do, you need to look at your long-acting insulin and see if you can either increase that or what time you're taking. Again, long-acting insulins, I mean, we have a variety of different insulins with different action profiles. So it's something else you can do. Look at your long-acting insulin and see if you can play with that a little bit, so that you would have sufficient amounts of long-acting insulin to deal with your dawn effect.
He says he takes 10 units about 15 minutes after waking up and before he hits 150.
Yeah, if you have to do that consistently, then you'll have to do it. So that's how it is. I mean, I don't get dawn effect. In fact, I'm really insulin sensitive from the early hours of the morning. I don't get a dawn effect, but I get foot on the floor phenomenon. And some people may have heard of it. So foot on the floor phenomenon is when you put your feet on the floor. The minute you put your feet on the floor, you're getting up, getting out of bed.
That's when it goes up.
And
I'm not diabetic, but that's me every morning. Like, I get that bump, and it's like my body's like, oh, we need to actually move now. Better dump some glucose, because if not, you're not moving. Like, it knows me a little bit too well.
I think it's that adrenaline, right? Adrenaline rush, because you're getting out of bed and you have 200 different thoughts in your head and all the things you have to do through the day. You're getting up with such a kind of force, and the adrenaline rush will, bump your blood sugars up. So I get that every morning, unless I tell my husband, I'm lying in, can you bring me my coffee here? Then I just don't have that. So if I give myself time,
so interesting.
After waking up, sometimes I actually spend time like doing all my emails in bed, to avoid that bump, unless I have to literally rush out of bed. But if I don't have to, I try to avoid that without the extra insulin, and then I'm completely fine.
Yeah. So this is my friend Amy. So she is not a type 1, but she had a Roux-en-Y, and she has Ehlers-Danlos. So she gets some pretty interesting things. So she says, not a sugar addictive person, weight loss slow. Lots of healing has been done. Her story's amazing. And she's on Homestead House channel. Her stuff just came out. Heard, though, to step up weight loss, some say to add a few carbs. And then she has reactive hypoglycemia because of Roux-en-Y before carnivore. Is it a good idea or not to even add the carbs? And if so, what?
What do you think, Rebecca?
I'm not sure on this one. Because she's had the Roux-en-Y. Roux-en-Ys are so hard they're very difficult with absorption issues. And how much how much room she has in her little pouch left over. So weight loss surgery is very difficult to deal with.
I would say try. We all learn from trying, and you can try with piece of fruit, for example. I mean, again, that's I wouldn't start eating bagels, for example, but a piece of fruit or maybe even
Yes.
half a sweet potato or something, and try it and see if it works for you. It works for you. I, you know, you don't know if it will work, if it will help you, unless you try it.
Unless
It's
you
not.
try it. Yeah, agreed. I mean, and there are some people that seem to do best with a little tiny bit of some sort of carbs, whether it's carbs from vegetables or like low glycemic fruits like berries. They do seem to do a little bit better. Tends to be women with hormonal issues, I see, um, that do better. So like middle age.
I'm pleased you mentioned it. I'm that person. I'm middle aged. I have hormonal issues. I'm perimenopausal. So after being sort of strict carnivore for about 18 months, I started reintroducing vegetables. I think it's better supporting my hormones overall. So I've found my happy place for now. It doesn't mean I'll never change in the future,
Mm-hmm.
because we have to be ready to adapt as
Yes.
as life changes and we age. But at
Mm-hmm.
the moment, some vegetables, in addition to the protein focused meals that I eat, not excessively high fat but moderate fat, this is what's working better for me.
For you. And it's not the first time I've heard that. And I've talked to Rob Goodwin, who does he does carnivore bodybuilding, and he has clients that are female and they come in hardcore carnivore and they're like, I'm just not getting the results. And he's like, you know what? We're going to just add in a little bit of carbs. And they come back to him and they say things like, oh my gosh, I finally feel normal. And it's like, I do believe there are some people that need a little bit more than others. And then there are some people that thrive and never need another carbohydrate in their life. And it's interesting.
Yeah, I think we all have different microbiome and
Mm-hmm.
different food intolerances maybe. And so I, we often see in Instagram, right, has probably hundreds of reels where they ask centenarians, what's the secret to to long life? Like, what do you eat every day? No two people, and they're from all over the world, no two people say exactly the same thing. No two people. So these people have completely different diets, different lifestyles, different climates that they've grown in, completely different lifestyles. So to say that the whole world population needs to eat this specific food, in my mind, is not feasible. So people thrive
Agreed.
on different diets. If you have a problem, though, if you have a metabolic problem, now that's where you really need to kind of sit back and review your diet and see what changes you can make and sustain.
Well, what is your number one thing for people to get rid of? In the UK, I don't like your system is different. Standard American food is horrific, and we're bleeding over into societies across the world. And I am so sorry that we've done that to people in the UK too. And sent you McDonald's. We sent you McDonald's. I'm so sorry. But what is your number one thing that you tell people to, like, the first thing you tell them to cut out?
We have to start with processed foods, right? I mean, junk foods.
Yep.
Don't eat the junk foods. Don't eat your biscuits or cookies, as you call them.
We say cookies, you say biscuits, yeah.
With your tea, you don't need it. Honestly, you're having tea. You're having 7 cups of tea. With every cup of tea, you're having like
You're having
2, 3.
1 or 2 cookies.
Do you need that? Let's look at the nutrition. Is there any nutrition in all those excess? And I really don't like using the word calories, but say food-like substances. Is there any nutrition in there?
Mm-hmm.
You're just fattening yourself up. If that's your goal, you're doing the right thing. If you want to fatten yourself up, Great, because that's exactly what you're doing. But if you want to achieve health or reverse some kind of metabolic illness, that's got to stop. It's got to stop. So,
Mhm.
junk foods, and then, of course, we have to reduce the carbohydrates, the starches, the
Mhm.
bread, and there are healthier food options out there. So, again, I mean, I before I even discuss like toxic foods and food dyes and things, the basics lie in just eat whole, natural, real foods, right?
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
let's tweak that. Let's just make changes. But it's interesting because I have a client, right? He stopped eating outside. So he's now cooking all his foods inside. He's a single man in his 40s. I think I wrote a Facebook post about him once. Um, so he chose a lifestyle for himself. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So he came to me. He chose a lifestyle that he could sustain.
Mhm.
I didn't give him any false hopes because in my mind, he couldn't possibly reverse his diabetes unless he went like real Dr. Eric Westman style, like below 20
Mm.
grams of carbohydrate, right?
Mhm.
So this guy is now cooking his food at home. He still makes his potatoes with lots of meat and home cooked vegetables. He's cooking every single night. He stopped snacking. He's still eating his carbohydrates. He still eats fruit. So last time I looked at his food diary, he's eating about 100, between 100 and 120 grams of carbohydrates per day. I wouldn't thrive if I ate that many carbohydrates. I wouldn't
Mhm.
personally. And yet, his last A1C showed that he wasn't diabetic. In literally just with 10 months, I think it was either 8 or 10. I forget the details, but I put his case study in a Facebook post. So we have something to learn from it. It's not all a case of all in or don't bother with it.
Yes. So, um, I'm a primal health coach, and one of the things, because primal is paleo, right?
Yeah.
Paleo-ish, um, and we are taught a spectrum all the way up to 100 grams of carbohydrates. Like there are some people that can heal with the right types of carbs up to 100 grams, and the fat will drop off, the A1C will normalize, their every lipids will normalize, life goes on, and they don't have to be restricted. I think that the people that have had the most amount of time in damage, like somebody who's been type 2 for 20 years, it's going to take longer to reverse that and more effort than somebody who maybe they've only been like for 1 or 2 years had some damage. And so I think that it's just nuanced between, how hard have you ridden your body and
Yes,
and
there's truth in
destroyed it.
that. Because I remember when I was interviewing Dr. David Unwin, who
Mhm.
publishes from his
Mhm.
clinic, like his case
Mhm.
studies. He put it beautifully. He said, we find that the more established the disease is,
Mhm.
the harder work, the more effort it takes to reverse it. So the more
Mhm.
established disease. And I like the way he put that because my client was just diagnosed with type 2. He made a few changes. Um, and he's no longer type 2 diabetic. So I was actually prepared to kind of slowly transition. Okay, now let's cut out the fruit. And the next step would be let's just completely eliminate the rice. This guy is doing well and he's happy with the diet that
Days
he's
on.
and
Yeah.
he can sustain. That's a
Yeah.
diet that he can sustain. So
Yeah. And I think that that's important. Now, I have not tried to reintroduce carbohydrates. I have autoimmune issues. So I'm very wary of and scared to reintroduce too much. I know that I can't reintroduce nuts because I get sick if I eat too many of those. And I tried a sweet potato over Christmas. I did try that, and I was sick for like 2 weeks. Like it just set me back so far. So I'm very, I have to be careful about what I reintroduce, but there's sometimes I'm like, I want that sushi. I haven't had sushi in a minute, but it's wrapped in rice. What's it going to do to me? Like, will I have a setback and have to claw my way back from autoimmune inflammation? And so, not all of us are ready to brave it, you know. So because
Yeah,
we don't know until you add it back in once you've eliminated it, you don't know. And with type 1 diabetes, it's a completely other autoimmune beast. Like, it's just different. Their inflammation it's like it's almost already done because it's destroyed the beta cells. With ours, it's still going on. So it's a different altogether.
I mean, can you imagine how challenging type 1 is when a type 1 diabetic also has other
Has other things.
autoimmune issues?
Oh
And
my
it's very
gosh,
common,
yes.
by the way, because, once you're
Once you have
diagnosed
one.
with one, yeah, you're more likely to be diagnosed with others. So this is
Mhm,
why when I did my full thyroid panel testing just recently, just
mhm.
just to know that I don't have any, thyroid sort of dysfunction, and it was all normal. So far, I don't have any other autoimmune conditions. And I tested that, by the way. So we were in the US, and the only vegetables I was eating were either cabbage or low carbohydrate, I don't know, salad stuff and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
in very small quantities. So we came back to the UK in December. Now, December time, all the grocery stores here, we call them supermarkets, they'd be filled
Mhm.
with Christmas vegetables, your traditional Christmas sort of vegetables, and there'd be carrots, parsnips, and they go like cheap. We're talking cents. Whole bag of carrots, locally grown, like British from your nearby farm, and they'd
Mhm.
be cents, under a pound, under 1 pound, so under $1, right? So you buy bags of it. So the parsnips, Brussels sprouts, parsnips, they're the traditional, and carrots, and of course potatoes. I didn't have potatoes, but I told my husband, let's just buy this. Like, we have missed parsnips. And so had he,
Mhm.
because we'd been out of the UK for good over 2 years when we returned. So, and it was Christmas time. So we were enjoying stew every single day. I remember I found out that on the first day when there were carrots in my stew, um, I had a massive blood sugar rise.
Mm.
I knew that the next day I knew how to dose for it. I knew that I would have to take insulin before eating. It's not like having a low carbohydrate. That's carbohydrate, right?
Yeah.
Carrots are
Yeah.
carbohydrate. So I
Yeah.
need to take my insulin before, so that insulin action starts kicking in by the time the carrot is converting into glucose in my body, which is pretty instant, actually.
Yeah.
So once I knew how to dose for it, I realized that, I mean, for the whole month, for the whole of December, it was like something new, and I embraced it. I haven't had a carrot since, but
Yeah.
so I realized that I'm actually doing really well. It's not having the same impact on my blood sugar as it did on that first day, because I didn't know how to dose for it, how to take it,
Yeah.
because I just don't routinely eat carrots, right? So
Yeah.
again, I think, I always say, because we travel a lot,
Mhm.
we are in completely different countries. Like, now we're getting ready to leave, and we'll be spending 4 months, the next 4 months, along the Mediterranean coast. So your routine changes, the climate
Mhm.
changes, your physical activity levels change, your access to foods
They
change.
change.
They
Oh, but it's
change.
the Mediterranean, and it's but the Mediterranean can mean so many things. There's so many
Exactly.
different, like, people are like, modified Mediterranean. Which Mediterranean diet are you talking about? There's about,
So
50 different ones.
I know, but the thing is, if you are in any country across or on the Mediterranean shore, right, you'll have plenty of access to fresh fish.
Yep.
You have access to fresh vegetables. You'll have access to good quality dairy, not like the dairy you get in the US.
No, our dairy's
And
not
I'm
quite good.
sorry, I suffered a lot because I love dairy, right? I could smell plastic and even the what's called British cheddar cheese, and I would buy it. I'm going, that's not British. I said, this is not British. There's something wrong with this. Like the French cheeses I would get, they're not French. There's something different here. All those expensive cheeses I would buy and not be able to eat, there's something. I realized I can't eat dairy, in this, right? Something off. So yes, I mean, Mediterranean diet can be many different things, but the common ground is plenty of fresh vegetables,
Very fresh.
seasonal vegetables, and
Yes.
fish and meat. People think, oh, Mediterranean diet is plant-based. No, it is. It includes loads of meat, including lamb, by the way. I mean, look at the
lamb. Oh, I love lamb. I love Greek food.
Greek food is full of lamb.
That's the one thing I miss is Greek, the Greek food. And I mean the good Greek food, like the ones we shouldn't eat. I miss those. Okay, so Amy is also an author. She does children's books, and she has an interesting question for you about what is safe for kids to eat for fruit or veg that's low carb, because her books are very carnivore, and her Valentine's Day one is about doing things sweet for people, not eating sweets.
Beautiful.
And it's beautiful books. So if she were to write a book about what is safe to eat if you're going to eat these things.
Amy, you should can you send me an email? So go to my website and you should be able to send me an email directly to my personal email address from my website. I'd love to contact you. So I already love you. So, okay. So low carbohydrate vegetables. Look, when I have type 1 diabetic children, I tell their parents, they're going to snack on something, give them cucumber sticks, peppers, ideally green peppers. But hey, there's no harm because you are going to give them a little bit of insulin for the pepper and the cucumber, tiny dose of insulin. So if they're snacking on, bell peppers and cucumbers with cottage cheese or any cheese that they like, good quality ham, perhaps. So these are good snack foods. Fruits, again, I mean, look, children, if they don't have type 1 diabetes, I don't see why your child cannot have a couple of slices of peach, for example. If it's seasonal, local, because I know I have a type 1 child from Greece. Talking of Greece, so she's from Greece, and they were visiting the mountains where her grandparents lived, and they had a tree of lomquat, one of those
I don't know that one.
It's an exotic fruit called loquat, I believe. So I'll have to look it up. So again, I told the parent, it's from grandma's backyard. Grandma's going to pick it up. Let her enjoy it. If you have to give her 1 unit of insulin for it, it's not going to kill her. And that's not like sweet, sugary fruit. It's probably an heirloom variety that's been growing in that region for years and years. And it's got such a short season. The tree will give fruit for only literally like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's the end of it. So I just said, you don't have any reason to completely. I mean, if your child has many diseases, many chronic conditions, then you have to be careful. But otherwise, real food always wins, even when it comes to type 1 diabetes. I'd rather a piece of apple than donut and candy and whatever. Yes, sugar is sugar. Sugar is sugar. There is that for someone who's metabolically broken. Yeah, you don't have too many cards in your hands, right? So sugar is sugar for you. But for an otherwise healthy child, there is a difference between a couple of
Yeah.
slices. I'm not talking about the sweetest, largest apples that you get in
Apple.
the world, for example, right? So
Yeah.
I'm talking about some local variety, just a couple of slices of apple to a child who's climbing trees, like me. I used to just climb trees all day long. I was just so active as a child. I literally could play all day long outside in the local forest, and and I would hear my mom calling me because we had to eat at certain times in those days when I was a child. We didn't have, so I used a different kind of insulin. So I would take the insulin in the morning, and then I would have to eat at set times throughout the day. Otherwise, I would
Okay.
drop low, right? It was a different kind of system of diabetes management. But I would hear my mom's voice calling me, and then I would tell my friends, just let's pretend we can't hear. And they realized that no, that's not wise. We're taking you home. Come on, let's go. And they would sit around the table with me. My mom would just wait until I finished. They would all encourage me, come on, eat. I didn't like eating, but I had to eat because I was just so active. So
Yeah.
yes, for an active child, a couple of slices of apple. But I mean, ideally, cucumbers are a good choice. Peppers are a good choice. Cheese is always a good choice.
Yeah. You were talking about like the metabolic health and the differences. Like I have one child that is metabolically good, and they're both low carb, but one is still metabolically not quite where she needs to be. And then my son, he can eat some of the things. He can eat more fruit, he can eat more nuts, he can eat more of the things. And she's not, she doesn't like it because she can't. And she knows she can't because she has some mental health things like with OCD and stuff. And if she eats the wrong things, it'll get really bad. And there's just things that she misses. And fruit, believe it or not, fruit's one of the big ones. It's like they miss apples, and they don't miss bananas so much, but apples and like strawberries and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean it's tough, right? Even with type 1 diabetes, I always tell people, look, if you're able to metabolize that glucose, and if you know exactly how much
like
insulin
you
to take,
react.
what
Yeah.
time and how to dose for it to stop the massive sort of rise, then it's fine. Because we want to prevent rising to, like Rich was putting it earlier on, rising to
Yep.
200, 210, or even 300, right?
Mm.
If you're only rising from 85 to 95 and you've had 2 slices of apple, you've dosed for it correctly, you're not crashing afterwards, you've cracked the codes. Just go for it and
Yeah,
enjoy
you've cracked it.
it.
You've cracked it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. I can't eat apples, but as I said, over the Christmas period, I did enjoy. I am talking carrots, but literally, I mean, for a whole pot of like beef stew, I would only put like 1 carrot, right? So I'm talking small amounts, but I enjoyed it because I knew how to dose for it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So Denise says, how to suggest to my doctor to test fasting insulin. I had to convince him to test my A1C, but he doesn't feel fasting insulin is important. I am sorry. The fact that you had to convince him to test your A1C is like mind blowing to me. Like,
Denise, where are you based? I'm assuming the US, right?
most of my audience is typically in the US. Oh my gosh, I miss so many. They say my voice is sounding crackly.
Yes, it did earlier on. I didn't want to say anything. I wonder if it's your.
You can. It might be my microphone being
Mhm.
super fun.
It's all right though. It's still clear. Yeah. So I occasionally have people who go for their routine test, Rebecca, and their doctor just routinely checks their fasting glucose, but not the A1C. So just ask for it. These are routine tests, and a fasting insulin test. Just ask for it. You don't need to convince your doctor. you may need to ask for it, and they may never have heard of it. So be prepared to just tell them why it's important and why you want it. But I understand that it's really a very inexpensive test. And
it's so cheap. I think the thing here is that, like, last year or last quarter in physical assessment, we were doing mock cases of like people like being diagnosed with things, and I suggested a fasting insulin test, and the DNP that was teaching the class was like, oh yeah, you mean fasting glucose, right? And I was like,
no.
No, fasting insulin. She's, I've never heard of that. I was like, well, we also, can test a fructosamine. And she was like, I've never heard of that. I was like, yeah. And it's like, what do you do? But she's like, I'm going to have to look that up. I'm like, well,
yeah.
Hopefully you'll learn something.
In fact, I've had clients who've just asked their doctors, and it was then tested upon their request, even though their doctors didn't know much about it. So and one of my recent clients, his doctor said, yeah, I'll put that on, but I wouldn't know how to, read the result. He said, no, I'm working with a nutrition coach, so you don't need to, I just want the test done. And he was fine with that. Alternatively, you can pay for it out of pocket, and they are inexpensive. So we have ownyourlabs.com.
Yep.
And of course we have, or you have, I'm not going to say we, but you guys have Quest Labs as well. Again, competitive prices. So
yeah. See if we've got any more questions, because we're running. What does this one say? Oh, is this a myth? A myth that your body craves what it is lacking.
Totally myth. I would say. Totally myth. You're a cigarette smoker. You're smoking cigarettes. You're craving cigarettes. In fact, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms when you suddenly stop your cigarettes. Does it mean your body lacks the cigarettes? I mean, lacks no. I don't believe in. I don't necessarily believe in that. I mean, people generally look. Food addicts, sugar addicts, they crave sugar all day long. And sugar is probably the last thing that their body needs. So their body doesn't need sugar, but they're craving it. So I don't personally believe in that. In some cases, there may be truth in that, but
I think maybe if you're certain minerals, I think that you might.
Yeah.
Like maybe salt. Like if you're like if salt is not tasting salty enough, then I feel like that's your body saying you need to add a little more, but then if it's like so salty you can't eat it, it's like you probably need, your body's like, I'm done. I think that there might be some upregulation in that and downregulation, but I just don't know about it for like broccoli. Like, would I be craving broccoli if I needed the calcium, or would I just want a piece of cheese? It's like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know much about that either, but
oh, you might know this one because I do not know that brand name.
No recommendation to use our insulin. I mean,
I don't know what Apidra is, which one that is.
Apidra is rapid-acting insulin. And so you can use rapid-acting insulin, but you have to be careful because you can't. So say for a meat-heavy meal, right? If you're going to need a total dose of 6 units of insulin for it, if you take 6 units of your Apidra up front or any point, that's a massive amount of insulin in one go. It's going to work rapidly, and it's going to drop your blood sugars very fast before that meat has had the chance to be digested, and obviously before you see a bump in your blood sugar. So our insulin is perfect insulin for it. But if you were to take rapid insulin, like I do, because I'm wearing a pump, and in my pump, I have rapid-acting insulin. But the way I dose for meat-heavy meals is I break down those 6 units. Say it's 6 units I need in total. I break it down. So I take 1 unit up front, then an hour later, I take another 2 units, and then I keep watching my blood sugars. Maybe half an hour later or 2 hours later, I take the remaining 2 units. So if you can do the same with multiple daily injections using Apidra to dose for your meat, but be prepared to take multiple doses to cover your meat.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of them say it's not necessary. I think eventually we're going to find, and this is just me on the American side. I think we're going to find that is going to shift as we get more and more into preventative medicine, especially with the MAHA movement, people trying to actually look at root cause. I mean, I think that we're going to find more and more people start accepting it as a first line to screen for pre-diabetes way before, like, because your insulin is going to rise way before your blood glucose ever does. I mean, so that's what I think. Paying out of pocket for it, if you're in the United States and you go to Own Your Labs, I think it's like $15 for an insulin test. If you use code Dr. Berry, DRBERRY, you will get so much percent off. I think it's like 10%. If you donate your results to Own Your Labs through the Citizen Science, that's an extra 5% off. You can stack those. So it's 15% off of $15. Which is not bad. So, but it's worth getting it done. See, what did Target Prime read? That is sad, Rebecca. Almost as sad as Midge asking his doctors as who was Ansel Keys, and none of them. Yes, they do not know in the United. Like, Ansel Keys has ruined the world, all because of lies, filthy lies. It is like pulling teeth. Oh, and she says that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this has been really great, and I appreciate you so much for coming on. Where can people find you, or if they want to work with you? Yeah, tell us how to find you. I don't know how I found you. I can't remember how I found you.
Facebook, I think, but this has been a blast, and we'll have to do it. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. We can. I love talking about it, especially for type 1, because I need you to teach me, because one day I might be working with people with type 1, and I need people who are type 1 to teach me, not just a doctor that read something out of a textbook.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rebecca, the best contact is my website, because it also gives you direct access to all my social media links, and you can email me personally or through my website. So it's lowcarbandfasting.com, and all my coaching packages are there. And currently there's a big discount as well, spring discount. So if anyone wants to benefit from that.
Yeah, I love this. I think you need just an idea. I'm going to put this into the universe. If you believe in manifesting, you and Amy need to get together and work on a children's book for type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, I'm waiting for an email from Amy. We'll have, yeah.
Yeah, because that would be great. Her books are on Amazon, and you guys can talk about it and yeah,
definitely
do that.
Definitely, and maybe I can help you, Amy, translate your books. I have a translation business, so I have a translation company. It'd be nice to.
She said she's trying to email and it's not going through.
It's not going through. Contact me on Facebook. There's no reason why it shouldn't go through, but
if not, I can. I'm friends with Amy, so I can also
pass my email address.
Yeah, I can do I'll do an introduction email between you two. And that way it'll connect. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you're on Nayiri's channel, I would love for you to come over to mine and, drop some love over there. And everybody on my channel, go subscribe to Nayiri. And and together we're just trying to spread the word that low carb is not dangerous and that everybody has a place here in somewhere on the low carb spectrum. So thanks, everybody. And I will see you guys next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.